Thank you, everybody, and I hope everything is working. I hope you can see me in front of my slides. Please do tell me if you can't.
Yeah, we can see you.
I'm in a hotel room, and I landed very late last night, and it is very early in the morning. I'm very grateful to be with you, and thank you, Roz and to Paolo, for two wonderful presentations, and I will say thank you after I finish my talk, because otherwise I know we are conscious of time. So let me just start by situating this paper in the work on constitutional scholars as constitutional actors, and just talk a little bit about why I think it is helpful to come at this question of academic activism, free speech and academic freedom through the prism of constitutional scholars as constitutional actors. Now, it seemed to me in 2020 that an unanswered question was hiding in plain sight. Namely, why, despite the recognition of the defining influence of constitutional scholars on the shape of constitutions and constitutional discourse, and despite the growing recognition that constitutional actors exist in a range of institutions beyond the traditional legislature, executive, and courts, there was still no general conception of constitutional scholars as constitutional actors. And to answer what seemed to be a very obvious gap in our thinking, I argued that constitutional scholars are best viewed as analogous to integrity institutions because of the central role that they play to well-functioning constitutionalism and the facilitative role that they play in a healthy democracy. Now, one consequence of my argument is that because constitutional scholars hold an especially influential status in constitutional design, deliberation, and discourse, framing them as constitutional actors is a helpful way to clarify their rights and duties while their status as scholars. So it has been gratifying to see that colleagues, some of whom are writing at the front lines of authoritarianism, have picked up on this idea of constitutional scholars as constitutional actors. And indeed, Taran Kaitan writes, a subfield that examines the performative role of constitutional scholars as self-conscious or unwitting constitutional actors would be even more welcome. Now, having returned to this piece that I wrote and having heard responses to it since it was published, I think I could have emphasized the point more clearly that my argument was one relating to defensive rights as well as duties. So let me just quickly outline my position on rights. Now, put simply, the idea of constitutional scholars as constitutional actors strengthens the case for academic freedom in the sense of independence from political interference. A democratically healthy constitutional scholarship will inevitably be placed in a position of direct disagreement with actors making claims to constitutional authority in order to consolidate or increase their power. And when these disagreements occur in a populist environment, where popular understanding of constitutions is low, political strategies are widely used to discredit the independence and authority of academic knowledge. Hence my view that as a form of resistance to authoritarian populism, one implication of an analogy between constitutional scholars and integrity institutions could be to strengthen academic freedom and protect the integrity and independence of constitutional scholarship. Now, independence as freedom from is a right, but it is also a duty which constitutes a benchmark against which academic institutions may be held accountable. Independence as a hallmark of integrity institutions is both a subjective and decisional exercise, implying a personal independence of mind, and an objective and institutional exercise in the sense that the public can be confident in scholarly independence and hold scholars accountable to it. Finally, independence is intimately connected to scholarly authority. Simply put, academic authority should not be bought and sold for the delivery of convenient ideas or solely in the pursuit of government, corporate, or institutional policy. It ought to be the product of an independence of mind and conviction. I should stress that my argument about independence, while it supports and protects constitutional scholars who disagree with those making claims to constitutional authority, also applies to instances of agreement. And independence here serves a crucial role in making clear the difference between independent constitutional scholarship, which may itself be supportive of claims to constitutional authority, from scholarship which has been gained to legitimize such authority. Independence can only take us so far, and now we turn to the point of my talk today. More is needed to address the deep challenges to scholarly discourse within a highly politicized setting. And that is why I turned in my paper to the idea of academic self-awareness, to provide a substantive complement to the more procedural notion of independence. And while constitutional lawyers are familiar and comfortable with the notion of independence, and I take on board all of the other challenges to the idea of independence, the less familiar notion of academic self-awareness goes some way to identifying the subtle difference between unscholarly partisanship and legitimate scholarly expertise. And it is because of the difficulty in finding this distinction that we have seen such a vigorous and rich debate about Scholactivism. Importantly, my view of academic self-awareness is that it is not about value neutrality. Using Weber, I described academic self-awareness as rendering one's own value framework transparent, coupled with a good faith engagement with opposing value arguments. The importance of good faith engagement with opposing value claims was, for Weber, an elementary duty of academic self-control. He wrote, "The academic teacher is strictly obliged to make the professorial chair," going back again, "to make the professorial chair not a seat of battle, but a place of historical and intellectual understanding of alien worldviews diverging from his own." In other words, academic self-awareness is the practice of engaging with the diversity of value claims with intellectual honesty and integrity. Now, colleagues have picked up on the ideas of independence and academic self-awareness in seeking to move beyond the bright and sometimes polarized lines of the Scholactivism debate. And Kaitan places weight in his skeptical account of Scholacticism, drawing on self-awareness and independence. Adrian Stone is seeking to soften Kaitan's skepticism of Scholactivism, also calls on academic self-awareness as a duty of all scholars which follows a matter of role morality from the status of the scholar. Stone views this concept as a way through the different positions within the Scholactivism debate. She writes, "The role morality of a scholar requires self-awareness and examining one's conduct in the light of the risks of compromising these values. So long as the scholar adheres to these ethical commitments, the scholar may use their scholarship in pursuit of specific outcomes." In short, academic self-awareness is attractive precisely because it shines a light on the difference between unscholarly hyperpartisan Scholactivism and scholarly Scholactivism. Now, scholars at the authoritarian front lines defend their own Scholactivism by drawing on notions of integrity, independence, and academic self-awareness. And I've listed a few of these here, and I won't dwell on those. I'm conscious of time. Arguably, academic self-awareness underpins other scholarly duties identified in this debate. For example, I think Kaitan's duty of revisability, which I think is a very important contribution to this discussion, cannot be achieved unless we also have a duty to engage openly and honestly with opposing views. And likewise, academic self-awareness is also signified in Jackson's concept of epistemic humility, a willingness to consider empirical reasoned challenges to current views of knowledge, as well as decentralization, applying a range of views. So I think this concept has captured the imagination of colleagues. I think it's yet to be fully examined, but there's something about its capaciousness as well as its constraints that may be alluring. I just want to end quickly by thinking about what a self-aware university might look like. And I want to invite us today to imagine how academic independence and academic self-awareness can be best achieved in a collective and institutional setting. We need to ask what kind of institution and collective or collegial setting will best provide us with the potential to fulfill the ideal of academic self-awareness as individuals? How would the values of self-awareness be institutionally or collectively embedded in the fabric of university life? What institutional bulwarks can individual academics rely upon in a highly polarized political environment? Now, building a self-aware university is a complex exercise, and in some ways it is connected but also supplementary to the broader institutional principles that Vicky Jackson outlines. We are trying here to enrich the discursive environment in which scholarship flourishes, one in which good faith and constructive disagreement is rewarded and celebrated. And to achieve individual academic self-awareness, we need a collective self-aware culture which celebrates the diversity of and a good faith and tolerant exchange between contrasting political and ideological vantage points. So I thought what we might do as a starting point is turn to thinking about building our universities with a constitutional mindset. And ironically, Aileen Kavanagh draws on academic exchange as exemplary of constructive criticism, which forms her part of the concept of constitutional collaboration. And given the increasing polarity within academic discourse, however, Kavanagh's ideas may be reversed to inform our ideals of a self-aware and collective culture of academic exchange. Certainly, we can draw upon the ideals of mutual critique, contestation, and correction as a central part of a collaborative working relationship and of an overarching normative framework of respect and of mutual trust as a basis for the working success of the collective academic endeavor as a whole. This endeavor must also be marked by disagreement, but it is disagreement bounded by mutual respect for our individual rights to form independent expert opinions based on sound scholarly research. And here it is crucial to treat opposing scholarly views with respect, not to caricature them for political gain. We should aim to cultivate, celebrate, and trust all kinds of difference, rather than falling into an environment where antagonism becomes pervasive and entrenched along the fault lines of partisan acrimony. And the final point here is not all academic opinions will be scholarly. And here we might be clear that the extramural political activities of our colleagues may incite considerable conflict between us, particularly in times of war. And drawing a line between our extramural convictions and disagreements, our use of our general free speech rights to advance them, and the scholarly work we advance that is protected by our rights to academic freedom is even more important now than ever. The threat to academic freedom lies not only in attacks on individual and institutional autonomy, but also in the eternal threat of the hyperpoliticization of the academic space and the polarization of academic opinion. Thank you so much.